And so first off, thank you everyone for being here. This is going to cover the 2021 SORT awardee, which is Valley Park. And this will also include the development of a neighborhood plan for this neighborhood. Since we are on a Zoom call.
Hey, Rosemary, can you please mute? We can hear you and Bryson's trying to talk. Sorry to interrupt, Bryson.
You're okay, Robert. Okay, I muted you, Rosemary. So if you have anything, so kind of with this Zoom meeting, what I would request is that if you have a question or a comment, to let the content on the slide go all the way through. There should be an option kind of at the bottom of your screen that allows you to raise your hand. You can also type directly into the chat box. There's a feature for that as well. So those are two different options to get my attention, or if I'm missing someone, I apologize. I don't get everybody on one screen. So if we can just notify me in some way, and then questions, comments at the end of the slide, that would be, I believe, the ideal way to do this. Like I said, feel free to ask those questions throughout the presentation as we're going. And then, so if we can remain muted until you have that question, and then when you're done, go back on mute, that will be great. So first off, I think probably the best way to do this is for everybody to introduce themselves. I think that's a good way for everybody to make sure we know who we're talking to and how we're affiliated with the NIA as well, or the neighborhood. I know maybe not everybody is a resident, so just a good way to familiarize ourselves. I'm Bryson Risley. I'm a neighborhood planner and planning analyst with the city of Topeka. I will be the person who corresponds the most with everybody for this neighborhood planning process. I think if we go city staff first, and then residents and individuals who are here for the meeting. So Braxton.
Thank you, Bryson. Braxton Copley. I'm the acting director of utilities for the city of Topeka.
Dan.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dan Warner. I'm the planning division director for the city of Topeka planning department.
So I'm just going to go down my list of who's in order. So I have Rosemary.
Yes, I'm here.
If you could just introduce yourself and let everybody know your relation to the neighborhood.
Okay, my name is Rosemary Medrano, and I am the charter president of Valley Park NIA. We started up in 2006, I believe. And it went really well, and we all really enjoyed it. We got a lot of people to participate, and neighbors got to know neighbors. I think that was the best part. That was the best part of the whole NIA creation. It was just, we got to meet people all over that area, and it was just so much fun.
She's in there. Okay.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Can you hear? Okay. And we got to know people and our neighbors, and it was just a wonderful time. So I'm thankful that Valley Park has is established in there in that area of our boundaries.
Thank you, Rosemary. And I apologize. I completely missed Latoya. If you would go ahead and introduce yourself, Latoya.
That's okay. I was going to wait until it came around. It's kind of hard to see everybody on the screen. I'm Latoya Burnett with the City of Topeka Community Engagement. For those of you that don't know me, I am on the call mostly as support for the neighborhood and basically everything community engagement with the NIAs. It's good to see you, Rosemary. Hi, Pam.
Hi. Hi, Latoya. Good to see you too.
Yeah.
Glad you're on.
Yeah, glad to be here. So.
Okay, so next on the list, I have Pam Garrison.
That's me. I'm the Valley Park resident for 27 years here, and I am currently the treasurer of Valley Park NIA, and have been for many years.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Done a great job.
Thank you.
Brian Granger.
Yes, I'm here.
If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and
Hello. Did you lose me?
No,
nope, I think we got you.
Okay. Yeah, I live in the neighborhood for about 5 years now. I'm just here to see what everybody has to say.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Granger. I have CACVC.
Yes, hello, everyone. This is Kim Thompson. I'm the vice chair for the CAC, vice president of the Central Park NIA, and I'm just here as an observer on behalf of the CAC.
Thank you, Kim. Okay, making sure I don't miss anybody here. I have Galaxy Tab S5E. Okay, if I'm wondering if we maybe have some issues with audio. So if you want to drop your name in the chat box, if you can, that would be great. Robert?
I am Robert Riley, Valley Park resident of maybe 12 years now, officer in different capacities the last few years, current Valley Park president.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you and everyone else for being here.
Hello?
I think you said Galaxy tablet. That's probably me, Greg Brace.
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
This is Greg Brace. I'm a Valley Park resident for 38 years.
Greg, glad you made it on.
Yeah.
Okay, Susan?
Hi, my name's Susan McClarty, and I'm a stakeholder in Valley Park. I bought my first rental property in Valley Park and invested in another property when somebody needed assistance with that. And so I have 2 properties in Valley Park, and I've served as an officer as well as currently a vice president, as well as the president of the Citizens Advisory Council.
Thank you, Susan. Wade Watson.
Hey, good evening. My name is Wade Watson. I'm an investor. I'm also an ex-resident of the neighborhood. I lived there for almost 10 years, but now I've got investment properties in the neighborhood, and that's currently my interest.
Sorry about that, everyone. Wade, I apologize. You were coming in really quiet there. If you could say that one more time, I apologize.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Wade Watson. I am an ex-neighborhood resident. I lived there for 10 years previously. I have a few rental properties in the neighborhood, and I continue to buy houses and fix them up over in Valley Park.
All right, thank you, Wade. And then I think we had one other person who came in just a second ago, Doug Mays. We're kind of doing some introductions, make sure everybody, we have an idea who we're talking with. So if you would take a second to introduce yourself.
Hang on. Okay, I'll turn the audio on. My name is Doug Mays. I own a house at 1552 Southwest 23rd. It was condemned mid-century modern and really ready to be torn down. We bought it about 1.5 years ago, and it's in pretty good shape now. My granddaughter, who's a nursing, works for a nursing student, lives there with her husband. And we also, my wife and I, we came to town in 1972. We lived in that neighborhood. So I'm interested in what happens over there from a personal standpoint, from our perspective of being part of that neighborhood once upon a time.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, so we've got our introductions out of the way. We will go ahead and kind of start moving on to some more of the content here. So let me make sure that everybody can see this as we go to the next one.
Yes.
Okay, so just kind of a brief agenda. So we kind of talked about that meeting process. Like I said, if you can keep on mute, raise your hand or notify. Please try and hold questions or comments till what we've talked about on the slide is completed. We just completed our introductions. We will then begin kind of talking about what the sort process is for the neighborhood. We'll talk about the existing conditions that were found in the neighborhood. And then we'll end with a brainstorming session to kind of get an idea and let you all voice your opinion on the neighborhood. Okay, so the goal of this meeting is to kind of answer the following questions. Where have we been? We will aim to kind of present all of these existing conditions. There hasn't been a neighborhood plan, so we'll kind of use the neighborhood health indicators to provide some guidance on that. Where we are now. Those existing conditions kind of look at current land use, zoning, housing conditions, owner occupancy, crime, infrastructure. So there's a lot to kind of unpack there. We'll at the end kind of touch on the impacts of the floodplain as well. But I just want to make sure that it's kind of known in the group before we get going on that the SORT infrastructure funds cannot be used for projects that would directly impact the floodplain, such as a levee. Curb and gutter, that's not going to have an impact on the floodplain, but the levee and stuff like that won't be able to be impacted. And then finally, where are we going? So this is kind of that exercise. We're going to have 3 questions that you all will help us answer. It follows kind of what is known as a SWOT survey. So that's strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. We'll use some of those type of questions to get a better understanding of what you all see the neighborhood as. So that's kind of what the goal of tonight is. So what is SORT? SORT stands for Stages of Resource Targeting. It's a city program that provides intentionally targeted infrastructure and housing investment in the neighborhood. So for this iteration, we have $1.7 million that will go towards infrastructure. Those projects can be sidewalks, curb and gutter, pavement, traffic calming type measures. It also provides $330,000 in housing investment in the neighborhood. That is tied to HUD, that's Housing and Urban Development. So there are income limits to those funds, as well as some other, there's kind of 2 different branches of that. We won't get too into the weeds on that tonight though. And then through SORT, individuals within the neighborhood are invited to be part of the SORT Planning Committee. That will really be the group that helps develop the plan, project selection, and things of that nature. So what we're talking about are target areas. So those are our kind of refined spaces within the neighborhood we'll focus on, about 3 to 5 blocks typically. And then year 2, we look at project design. That's when the city engineers begin to outline the projects and design them. And then, so we're looking at 2023, which would be year 3, and we'll start to have implementation of projects if all goes as planned. So digging a little bit deeper on that year 1, we have the planning process. This is more of kind of a timeline. So we're in March, we're having our kickoff. From here, we'll hopefully have a SORT planning committee that we can use to meet throughout the spring and summer. Again, you all are invited to be a part of that committee. Those will work to outline the content that's in the plan. The following slide will kind of show what topics will be discussed in those meetings. And then in roughly August, we'll have another neighborhood-wide meeting. So similar to this, we'll send out notices to everybody. Hopefully by then we'll have some changes and we won't be as limited in how we present to the neighborhood. And then after that, we're, planning commission and then the governing body for adoption. Okay, so elements of a neighborhood plan. Generally speaking, these are kind of the topics that, again, we'll cover in the spring and summer months. We're working to get a history put together and any input that you all have. I know, Greg, you said, for instance, you've been in the neighborhood. There's a lot of individuals who have a long history in the neighborhood who can provide some insight as well. We'll get the history put together. We'll look at these existing conditions. Those will go into the plan. We'll start to identify some trends there. We'll look into demographics and what some of the trends are within demographics. So population, land use, property values, income and poverty. Then we have vision and goals. This is kind of what we want. This is really a part that we need the citizen input on. This is how you all want to see Valley Park in 10 to 15 years. You can be specific, you can be kind of broad with that language. The goals aspect of that is identifying the guiding principles that are needed to reach kind of some overarching goals that we have. These include things like economic development, neighborhood image, safety, environment, and there's a longer list, and hopefully you all will help guide what some of those are. Number 3, future land use plan. If necessary, a future land use map will be developed. You know, there aren't a lot of vacant parcels in the area, and it would be interesting to see what kind of some of the thoughts are as far as future land use within the neighborhood. Then we have number 4, revitalization strategy. So these are the themes and strategies used across the neighborhood. They get specific to the target areas. So again, those are those 3 to 5 blocks that we're talking about. These strategies can also be used to outline additional programming the neighborhood can use for continuing improvement. Strategies are not necessarily always something that the city takes the lead on, but can help provide that context so that the neighborhood leadership has a good way to begin that community building and organizing. And then implementation. So that's where we outline what those projects will be. So talking about infrastructure, housing, kind of putting numbers to what we're talking about here. And I apologize, I just realized I've been going kind of fast. Does anybody have any questions with what we covered so far?
Would we be able to get a copy of what you're talking about here?
A copy of the presentation, Rosemary?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm recording this, but I can also go ahead and send out the presentation as well.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you send an email, then I can print it out. You don't have to mail it out. But if, you know, email would be fine for me. I don't know if somebody else would get mailed out.
Okay, then yeah, absolutely. If anybody else wants a copy of the presentation, just shoot me an email or give me a call and we'll facilitate making sure you get a copy of that.
Bryson, this CAC Kim, on the
Yes, Kim.
1.7 and the 330,000, does that 330,000 come out of the 1.7 or is it in addition to?
It is in addition to. Those funds are separate. So the 1.7 is from the city. The 330,000, I believe, are CDBG funds, so Community Development Block Grant, and those are again through HUD. So that's kind of a separate pool. And then Mr. Granger, I see you have your hand up.
I just wanted a copy also.
Absolutely.
Thanks, sir.
Okay. Just making sure real quick, we don't have anybody else with a hand up. All right. So again, just a reminder, if you're interested in being part of the SORT Planning Committee, let me know so we can make sure that when we set up our next meeting, you get the invite. Okay, so it's kind of an intro into our existing conditions. We're gonna have neighborhood health. So there's kind of 5 different variables that go into that. Zoning, what is the current zoning? Land use, what is the property being used for? We'll go into housing conditions, crime, owner occupancy, and infrastructure. So when we get into the housing, crime, owner occupancy, and infrastructure, kind of one thing to keep in mind is that the scale they're on is that the darker the color, those tend to be the worst conditions. So they're kind of color coordinated, but keep that in mind as we go. So we will get into neighborhood health. So neighborhood health, we produce these documents every 3 to 4 years. It measures the percent of persons below poverty, Part 1 crimes per capita, average residential property values, percent of owner occupied homes, and the number of boarded or unsafe structures in a block group. And it produces 1 score for the neighborhood. On the next slide, we'll kind of dig into those numbers a little bit further. So what you see here is that the 2017 neighborhood health map indicated that Valley Park was found to be an outpatient health rating. So again, this actually works kind of in a different scale. So the dark blue, so what you see right below Valley Park, healthy, and we see here Valley Park is outpatient. So this is kind of a continuation of what we just saw. This is actually looking at a little bit more refined numbers and going back to the year 2000. The same color coordination applies here. So the dark blue is healthy, the light blue is outpatient, and that pink color is what we call at risk. So keep that in mind as you're looking through the chart. So as you kind of look through this chart, I realize there's a lot of numbers and information. So what you kind of need to look at is there was a drop in the percent of persons below poverty going from 2014 to 2017. And again, it's kind of how you look at this chart, whether you view it from 2000 to current or 2014 to current, it's kind of, you know, there's different perspectives to view this information. So there was a slight raise in crime from 2014. It still was not enough to raise it out of the healthy category. And that 10 per capita is kind of on par with what we've seen in the neighborhood historically. Average residential values seem to have kind of stalled around that $80,000 mark. That's kind of another takeaway that puts it in the outpatient category. Home ownership rates have continued to drop since 2003. Overall, it's still considered outpatient for what we look at, but something to keep in mind, and that's why it's highlighted here. Overall scores of 3.2, so I believe it's 3.4 and above will get you into healthy, so kind of on the fringe of that, but overall, these are what we're using to evaluate kind of the where we've been when we talked about that question to start. And want to present an opportunity for anybody who has any questions about this, or if they need time to kind of digest everything that's on this slide here.
Bryson, can I add something real quick? This is Dan.
Yes. Thank you.
Bryson, in addition to working on this plan, is also working on updating neighborhood health. So there will be some new health information to share with the neighborhood in a couple months.
Thank you. And then Mr. Granger, do you have your hand up or is that from previous? I just want to check. All right, thank you.
Sorry, didn't know about that.
Oh,
Sorry.
no problem at all. Okay. So now we're looking at zoning. As you can see on this map, and I realize the legend is not super large, but what we're looking at here is primarily an R1 single family zoning. The higher density housing and commercial uses are along 21st Street, which is kind of pretty typical with what you want to see, where the higher intensity uses are along more of your highly traveled roads. Land use, it's going to have a lot of overlap with what we just saw from zoning. So 97% of the parcels within the neighborhood are for single family. As you can see, there is very few vacant, which are kind of that white with the red striping in there. One's connected to a commercial site. The other one is kind of right next to, kind of acts as like a drainage system. So not necessarily a very developable site. I've gone back and looked at some of the maps going back to 1949. The neighborhood has really, once it grew into this single family nature, there has not been a lot of change over the years. Another consideration with this, so the multifamily uses, so that's what you see in brown, they make up just 1% of the parcels, utilize 9% of the total acres, but they provide 250 units of housing. So as you kind of think about that, that's a pretty significant number of housing units that are provided to the neighborhood. Housing conditions. So like I said, as we view these next 4 maps, keep in mind that the darker colors tend to be the lower scores. And something to consider here. So the way these maps are created is we look at each individual property for whatever that particular category is. So for housing, we evaluate each property. They're tied together into blocks. And from there, we take the average score of all the parcels on that block and get kind of a composite score for that. So it does not necessarily mean that every single home is great in an area where you see sound. There may be a property that doesn't fall into the sound category, but the overall averages have put it into that category. So these also do not include the multifamily properties. So if you're interested in what we use when I go and evaluate the properties, there are tables in the previous neighborhood plans. That's something else I can provide if you're interested. But we look and categorize things into minor, intermediate, and major deficiencies. So those are kind of, major deficiencies have more of an impact on an individual score than a minor. So kind of looking at this, generally, there's a lot of sound housing from our perspective when we look at this, and I'm interested to hear what you all think from this as well. But you can see there are some pockets of housing that were not in the sound that saw minor deterioration or intermediate deterioration. And if there's any questions or comments, I'd be happy to take those now.
Oh, yeah. Now, could you give a definition, more explanation of what you mean by, I can't see this tiny print, that intermediate deterioration and the major, what are you saying there?
So to avoid getting too far into the weeds, essentially we have a certain number of minor deficiencies will change a property into a different category. If you have enough that go from sound to minor deterioration, so if the average of the block kicks it into a minor deterioration, that's going to affect the whole block score. The minor things we look at are, is there spots of paint? So there's a difference between, is there a couple of spots on a home that needs paint versus does the whole entire home need repaint? So one's a minor, one's an intermediate deficiency.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes.
Tyson,
Yes.
did I understand you to just say that one home having that problem will cause the entire block to be rated that way?
No, I apologize if I wasn't clear on that. So you could have a block where 95% of the homes are sound and one is found to be in minor or intermediate deterioration. That does not kick the whole block into that, because we use the average, everything would most likely come out to be sound. So I guess what I'm trying to emphasize here is that you may see a map that shows sound housing conditions. It does not mean that you will find every single home on that block to be in what you may perceive as a sound condition.
Okay, I'm wondering about the area that's in the middle blue color on Boswell Court between 22nd Park and 24th Street on the east side. Let's see, that would be on the west side of Boswell Court. And you have that entire block from 22nd to 24th as intermediate deterioration.
Yeah.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct. That is actually a minor deterioration. I apologize.
Minor, I'm sorry, minor deterioration, the middle of the blue colors. And yet slightly north of there is a house that is boarded up, uninhabitable, all fenestrations destroyed, and it is shown in sound condition, and it is absolutely uninhabitable.
So again, you can have one home that does not bring down the whole entire score of a block.
Okay,
And, you know, I can, this is something where I can go and I can double check and see what I have for my score. The other thing is that when I do my scores, it's a point in time. So I can only evaluate the conditions for what I am seeing at that time. And if things change, it's very possible that, you know, as spring comes along, all of a sudden there are things that are kept outside of the house that may be marked as a deficiency that aren't there during the winter. So it's because it's a point in time. I'm not saying it's a perfect science, but again, one score does not make the whole block.
oh, okay, thank you.
Yes. Robert.
I was just gonna say feedback wise, I know you're the expert, so you don't necessarily need this, but overall at a glance, this seems pretty spot on. I don't know every single pocket extremely intimately, but yeah, looks accurate overall.
And I appreciate that feedback. Again, you all are the ones who live in the neighborhood and experience this neighborhood on a day-to-day basis. I'm not there as, you know, as frequent as you all. So I also lean on your expertise on this.
So how do you get this information on this map? How is that, how do you come up with that?
So we have a scoring sheet and it's all done from the exterior. So we can't evaluate the interior of a home, but from the exterior, we have what we've categorized as minor, intermediate, and major deficiencies. So we go in and I go parcel by parcel, so home by home, and say, when I look at the exterior of this property, how many of the minor deficiencies do I see? How many major? How many intermediate? And we take those and we have kind of an Excel program that creates a score for that individual parcel and then for the full block.
So are the residents, are they advised as to what, you know, what you just did? I mean, how are they probably they don't even know that this exists, this kind of color coding and, you know, how that neighborhood, you know, how it shows up here on this map. I mean, does that information get to them or they just don't know about that?
So when we send out the letters, and I know there have been some issues with people accessing the website. So these maps are all available on that website I sent out. I will also make sure that this presentation gets posted. You know, we invited everybody in the neighborhood, whether you're a resident, a tenant, if you're, you know, a renter or a property owner, to attend this meeting. So this is really where we're trying to get the word out. This is, you know, we have limited resources on our end to make sure this goes out. So we will also rely on you all as residents of the neighborhood to make sure neighbors are aware. And, you know, if again, word of mouth is a great way to get input and spread the word. So if you think that a neighbor should view this information, either direct them to the website or have them contact me and I can try and share this as widely as we can.
Is there some way to send out a copy of that map with the next, you know, maybe the next newsletter? Not a full page map, but maybe a half a page so people could see that, our residents could see that. That's just a suggestion.
So as far as the newsletter, I would have to, I believe, defer to LaToya on newsletter stuff. I'm not 100% sure what the process of that is. So typically,
when you did this, when you sent this out, I mean, will you be sending out another one in the near future? Or?
So that kind of letter we won't be sending out probably until around August when we have our next neighborhood-wide meeting.
Okay.
But again, if you think that it would be helpful for a couple of these copies to be handed out to residents, I can print off some of these maps so people have a physical copy if you want to show that to someone or something along those lines.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Just make sure I don't see any other hands up before we go on. Okay. So owner occupancy. As we saw from the neighborhood health, we know that owner occupancy has been declining. Currently, we have a 54% owner occupancy, so homeowners, people who own their home, and there's really not a clear discernible pattern of who that is or why there may be.
Well, we
that
can
make-
tell you why. We can tell you why.
And again, this is an opportunity. This is the forum where open ears.
Okay, well, we had that flood in May of 2007. And about 3/4 of that neighborhood was devastated. And also those that were not in a floodplain went into a floodplain, and they were not happy about that. Because now they had to pay flood insurance, and that runs about $1,400 in January, and that's a lot of money to come up with when you paid your taxes. I paid 600 and some in December, so that's very, very that's a hardship. So anyway, so I can see why people moved out of there. They sold their home or else they rented it. But we saw that right after that flood. And some of those homes weren't, it was up to the homeowner to get those houses back up to par. Some of those houses didn't. And that's part of the problem.
And that's, sorry,
And so, we have spoken to the Corps of Engineers here in Topeka with the city office here, and then the Corps of Engineers in Kansas City. And they did, because we were very concerned about this. We don't want this to happen again because that was very traumatic. I mean, some of us were like in a PTSD mode. And I can tell you for myself, I used to be able to count change at a count change back to a person. I couldn't do it anymore after that. That was just one of the symptoms that happened to me. And then I had a heart attack a year later just from the stress. So that's just to say, that is, I would say that was a major reason of why people began to leave Valley Park.
Don't worry,
So
we
I
might
think-
need a Band-Aid someday, Rosemary.
But I believe, Corps of Engineers said that they were on a 20-year plan, and they were going to see what they could do to keep this from happening again, and the possibility that we would not have to pay flood insurance anymore. That would be a biggie. That would be wonderful. That'd be a miracle. And I believe in miracles. So if that could happen for Valley Park, that would be awesome. That would be awesome.
thank you, Rosemary. And then Robert, I see you have your hand up.
No, I'm sorry. I'm just clapping for Rosemary because I agree with everything she says. And I know that you've said this meeting isn't to deal with the levy, and that's a different conversation with a different group. But we're remiss if we don't talk about flooding in this conversation, and it's going to stare us in the face for the entire meeting in different regards. And you want to know why people don't live here? That's why.
Thank you.
And there's other things that we can do. We're talking curbs and other stuff. I'm not trying to grill you. I'm just saying it's going to come up a lot. Came up a lot when we surveyed people about what they want in this neighborhood, and by far and above, it's number one. It's not even close.
I understand, and I get that and Wade, I see you have your hand up, so I just want to make sure, Robert, I acknowledge that. I feel like that's something we're hearing a lot of too on our end. And again, it's just
I appreciate it.
It's the circumstance of the funds we have is just, it's not something that we can do. But I hear what you're saying, and I understand the frustrations with
We're
that.
just gonna have, I know, in every opportunity that we get an ear of power, and anybody that has any connection to a budget, I can't help but be a squeaky wheel, because this is people's livelihoods and their homes. And we can get the potholes out of the street, we can put street lights up and all this other stuff. But if our livelihoods are threatened every spring and fall from this damn creek that floods because a development 15, 16 years ago can't redirect stuff, and the city can't address drainage along the Sugar Creek at certain points, then like it just has deemed this area a lot less worthless. Home values go down, our safety, like our safety's in jeopardy. It's our safety. Like the PTSD Rosemary talks about isn't about her home value dropping 30%. It's about the fact that her life flashed before her eyes in a matter of an hour. And I'm sorry, I'm done. It's just, this neighborhood can't have a conversation about improving it without that being at the forefront, even if this project can't directly affect a levy. Rant over, I'm sorry. Thank you. I know you hear us, Bryson.
No, you're fine. You are completely fine.
Can I add a little, let me just add a little sentence here. The last, that was in July of last year. The creek almost went over again. And my daughter lives in my home right now with 3 small children, and it scared her. She packed up those kids to get out of there. Her husband stayed behind to put furniture higher at higher ground. I went to go look at the creek myself, and it was inches, just inches before going over. And that was frightening. That was frightening to me because I had already been through that. And I did not want my daughter to go through that also, and her children. And the grandchildren were frightened. So I don't think people realize how traumatic something like this is to us. And Robert's right. Every time it rains, we don't sleep well. If it's raining, you don't sleep well that night because you don't know if it's going to go over and somebody's going to say, you got to get out of there.
I'm going to be honest. I'm not sure how to transition. Rosemary, I appreciate, and I can't say that I understand that fear. That's not something I'm going to sit here and try and act like I comprehend on a regular basis every time it rains. And I appreciate you sharing that. And, that's a serious thing.
Yeah, thank you.
Wade, you had your hand up?
Doug did.
I did. I just wanted to also reiterate, I mean, the flood happened when I lived over there. It was pretty traumatic. Rosemary, I totally get it. I no longer live in the neighborhood, but I do have properties that I own there. And when it rains hard, I don't sleep well. And I'm actually 2 a.m. I'm driving through the neighborhood to check and see on the creek and where we're at. It still sticks with me. I have recently purchased a house over there, and I was fixing it up, trying to make it a better place for. It was pretty run down. I run into some problems because the previous owner decided not to participate in the flood program with FEMA. And anytime there's a lapse in your flood coverage, you are no longer eligible to participate in the federal program. That didn't have anything to do with me, but I'm trying to sell the house. I've spent quite a bit of money on it. I'm trying to sell it right now. The buyers are looking at an FHA loan. I don't think the house is going to be able to sell to these people because I'm still not confident that I can get private insurance to insure the home. I've got quotes from all over the United States. The government rate, the best I could get was $1,400 annually. That was through FEMA, but this house cannot go back into that program. So that's not an option for this particular residence or any other house that does not have flood insurance. The best rates I found were out of some companies out of state that were $850 the first year. And those rates dropped to $650 annually every year after. And I think that was with a $5,000 deductible, which does not help people very much. I know in 2007, when my house flooded, I think it cost me about $8,000 to repair the house. I didn't have any flood insurance. I cut the walls out 2 feet up from the floor in the entire house and replaced everything. It was $8,000. So if you have a $5,000 deductible, it's really not doing anything to help you out. I've run this all the way up the chain to the state of Kansas coordinator, and basically what they helped me do was figure out exactly what the elevation of my house was. There are several homes in the neighborhood I think could probably come out of the flood zone. They need to find out exactly what their base elevation is at their residence. If they're within I know the state was saying they would work with people and try to help get them into the FEMA program or get them a certificate of elevation that would take the flood insurance necessary or necessity away.
Wade, I appreciate that. And it sounds like you have some good information. That's something that, I hate to make it sound like you've done all the legwork, but there's some really solid information you provided there that I'd maybe like to pick your brain about at another time if you have some time.
Absolutely. I know this is not the place to get into this discussion, but I know flood it's in front of all of us. It's a problem. It's going to be ongoing, and I know it's a deterrent. I did have several people come through the house that I fixed up and have for sale. I had one offer out of about 6 tours, which I thought was a pretty good ratio. So people aren't necessarily completely scared away, but they need to understand what they're getting into. And I know flood insurance and the ones that were here, I mean, we still have flashbacks when it rains. So anytime you've got some time, I'd love to sit down and chat some more. I would love to help.
Well, I appreciate that. Greg, you've had your hand up for a while here. Greg, you are muted. Okay, just want to
There we
make sure.
go. Yep, sorry, I'm not used to running this machine.
I understand.
I think you mentioned earlier that we could not use any of this money for any levy work. Is that correct?
Correct.
And is there in fact some study that would indicate that we need some additional levy work?
Yes.
So I will defer that. Braxton, if you by any chance could provide any insight on that.
Yeah, Braxton Copley Utilities Department. Just a couple of things. We currently have a $16 million project spread out over 3 years in the city's capital improvement program, and that would be commencing in 2023, spilling over into 2024 and 2025. That project would be funded approximately 65% by the Corps and approximately 35% by the city of Topeka. So basically the Corps share would be 10 million. The city of Topeka share would be about 6.5 million. And the project has 2 components to it. One component would be doing some channel modifications upstream of where you guys are. The other component of it would be constructing a levee to handle a 25-year storm event along the perimeter of your Valley Park. I'm going to share my screen to show you the map of this.
And let me know if you need me to give you.
I need you to unshare so that I can jump in there.
Okay, all right.
So this is your neighborhood right here. So basically what we're talking about as part of this project, it would be a mile of levee, and this would be a 25-year levee starting up here on the east side of Washburn, running along the Shunga, going just past Randolph, where we could tie it into some higher land. So that's the portion that would impact you. Again, the total cost of this is 16 million, with the city share being 6.5 million. Now, the Corps did a multiple year study, and this is what they came up with, that they would be willing to participate in to the tune of their $10 million, which is the maximum amount. Now, they did, as part of the various and sundry things that they were looking at, they did look at the construction of a 100-year levee plus 3 feet of additional freeboard, which you would need to get FEMA certification of this levee unit that would allow the 420 properties in this area, or 420 structures in this area, to be removed from the base flood elevation. The problem is that that project would be a $23 million project to do that, which exceeds the Corps' limit. So that's why the Corps came in and said they would be willing to do this. We've identified funding from the city utilities department to be able to partner to do this project, as well as the modifications of the channel upstream. So when Bryson says that you have $1.7 million that are available, you can see when I start talking about the scale of projects being $16 million, $25 million, the $1.7 million is not going to provide any sort of protection. I mean, to get this one, this is part of that $16.5 million project that we're partnering. So with that, I will stop the share. And I will also point out that one of the other reasons that the Corps was not willing to do the 100-year plus 3 foot of freeboard is that it was going to induce damages upstream, which would require additional mitigation effort, which could possibly rise to the level of about $7 million to increase the freeboard on the Wood Valley Dam to be able to mitigate that. And the Corps will not participate in a project that is going to induce damages either upstream or downstream. So that's just to give you some background that the Corps studied this. They came up with some recommendations, and the one that they're willing to proceed on is the one that I just showed you.
Thank you, Braxton. And I would like to ask you additionally, that proposed levy, you stated that would be for a 25-year type event.
Correct.
That would roughly follow the Shunga Trail sidewalk, is that correct?
Well, think of it as following the Shunga Trail embankment, as I showed you on that. That is there has not been actual survey work or design that would incur, assuming the governing body approves the project, that would start in 2023, that we would start the survey work and the design work in earnest, because it's literally an inch by inch in terms of where you construct that levee to handle the 25-year rain event.
Correct. And the 07 flood that some of us lived through, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was a 500-year event?
Actually, the Corps developed their own model and studied that rain event. And the Shunga is a very flashy creek, meaning that it rises and falls very rapidly because of the amount of drainage area and the narrowness of it, in contrast to the Kansas River, which is not flashy. That's very, very easy to forecast what the Kansas River is going to do. But the unsteady state model that the Corps developed for the Shunga Creek, they said it was a 10-year event that caused it to leave the banks and do the flooding in the 2007 storm. So this 25-year levee would be designed to eliminate an event of that magnitude from happening again.
Did you say 10, the number 10?
10.
Okay, very good.
Could you repeat that again, please?
And that would this proposed levy that is yet to be approved, would that also have in a component of that work someday in the future modifications to the 2 current levees that are on the Shunga Creek?
No, those levees are significantly further downstream. I have a separate project that I'm looking at that I actually have gotten my initial engineering report on. It's called the Shunga Right Bank Levee, and it's the one down there by protects a portion of East Topeka that did not overflow in the 2007 event. But that is not a certified levee. So I have a project that I'm just getting started on to look at what it would take to get that, the uncertified right bank Shunga levee certified so that it would, we'd be able to remove a number of structures from the 100-year floodplain.
Yeah, that's excellent. I wonder how many people that are on here with me tonight realize that there are in fact two rather large levees on the two branches of the Shunganunga Creek. One of those levees being behind what we commonly called Wood Valley Racket Club. If you were in the parking lot or the first street to the west of Wood Valley, you can see the levee behind those buildings. They call it Great Life something now, I believe. That levee withholds water from the south branch of the Shunganunga Creek. And then that causes water to back up into Welton Grove Park, which is nearly a 40-acre wooded parkland that is basically due west of the sports complex off of 39th and Burlingame Road. You enter into that by the CCO fuel lock station. That entire area from behind that sports complex clear out almost to 45th Street, quite a significant ways west. That's a park called Welton Grove Park, City Park, and that is all flood area controlled by that levee.
Technically a dam, not a levee. It's the Wood Valley Dam. It's not a levee. It's actually designed and constructed as a dam with an emergency spillway. It's not a levee.
Okay, I need an education on dam versus levee. I understood it to be a levee because it does not hold back water. It restricts the flow of water.
In my discussions with the Corps, and we, I don't want to digress, but we'll just say that we'll agree to disagree, and because it's a very technical minor point.
Okay. Well,
Greg,
okay.
Can I cut you off for a second here? I apologize. I hate to do this. So I have this meeting going till 7:30. At that point, I believe our Zoom call is going to end. We have about 9 slides left. I know there is a lot of good discussion here. One of our SORT planning committee meetings will be dedicated to infrastructure discussion. Braxton, if you're willing, I would try and coordinate that time with you. And again, I realize there's a lot of good information that's going on right here. I apologize. We just need to kind of keep what's going. If we have time that leads up to that 7:30, I would, we'll have some more opportunity. We have a picture with the floodplain. I just kind of need to keep us on the time schedule. I want to respect everyone's time, but also make sure we present everything we have here so we can, when we get into the planning process, be able to talk about a larger discussion than just floodplain. Is everybody okay with that?
That's perfect, Bryson. Because I need to hop off. I have another commitment, but I will be happy to attend your committee meeting when you guys have the infrastructure discussion.
Thank you, Braxton. I appreciate all that good information you provided.
Thanks, Braxton.
And again, I realize that there were some hands up there. I know Susan, Wade, you all had questions as well. I'm going to save the chat. And like I said, this recording is being saved as well. So this is not something we're glossing over. I just want to make sure that we don't spend the rest of our time talking about this and not dig into the rest of the information. Again, I apologize for interrupting that. Okay, so I will try and get through some of this. We do have about a 15-minute exercise at the end of this as well. So we'll go a little bit quicker through some of this information. Again, still ask questions if you have them. Crime, So we get our information from the Topeka Police Department related to Part 1 crimes. This is a relatively colorful map. That does not necessarily mean that this neighborhood has higher rates of crime than other neighborhoods we've worked in. As you can see, there is 47% of the blocks experienced no crime, and there were some that fell into that one crime. So Part 1 crimes, we're kind of talking about the more severe aspect. There's some theft, violence, is included in that as well. The highest instance was 9 in one block. Again, that's tends to be in 2 locations. It's commercial, multifamily, but as we kind of discussed earlier, in those multifamily units, you have 250 housing units. So if you break down the number of people that are living in those more condensed areas, that does not necessarily correlate to more crime happening there. It just seems like it because of the more people who live there. Any questions here? All right. Infrastructure. So this is probably the broadest description. So this takes 3 different categories: pavement, curb and gutter, and sidewalk scores into account. So generally, the lack of sidewalks throughout the neighborhood has the largest negative impact for Valley Park. You can see as you're along 21st, a lot of those areas that have sidewalks in place also have good curb and gutter, good pavement. That's where you're getting the no defect scores. So it's really the sidewalks that are having the greatest impact. That's a discussion to have. I know in initial survey results, there were some people who were not as receptive to sidewalks being placed in the neighborhood, but we also need to consider the fact that there is an elementary school in the neighborhood as well. Making sure that safety for children who are trying to get to and from school, I think, should also be a consideration. When we look at curb and gutter, you all live in the area. I'm sure you realize that there's kind of 2 different styles. They're what we think of as maybe our more modern style, where it's kind of poured as one piece. There's some of them that have kind of 2 different angles, I guess I would describe it as. It's kind of shaped like this, as opposed to a more traditional style or a newer style. Looking at that can be something we look at as infrastructure projects. If you want it, the older style replaced and poured for newer, that's another consideration. Any questions on infrastructure conditions? Okay. This map is showing pavement. I realize it's lines and they kind of bleed together color-wise, so it might be a little tough to differentiate. The majority and a significant portion of this falls into a fair or better scale. That's again better than what we see in some of the other neighborhoods that have received SORT, but that doesn't mean that those roads are perfect. It's similar to housing. You may have a segment of road that's listed as fair, and there may still be a pothole or 2 that needs to be replaced. So this is not saying that that whole entire segment is in good condition. And that's another discussion we can have. I know, again, from the survey, McVicker has been called out as a street that may need some improvements. But as we get this SORT planning committee together, this will be something that we really want to start looking into. Is there any road projects that can be done in this area? Any questions, comments, thoughts here?
Why, I was just wondering, why are our city streets such in bad shape? This kind of, and this, our neighborhood falls into that. But, when I go to other cities, I am amazed at how well kept they are and maintained. And why are we struggling with that? I get kind of embarrassed when people come from other states or other cities, and they're the ones that make the comment with Warrior Street. So I know they are. I was just wondering, why is that so? I just don't remember it being like this in years back.
Rosemary, I'll be honest, I am not prepared to answer for a citywide answer for that. But
Okay, I just.
But no,
Yeah.
I understand.
I don't know if they're using different materials that's not, they don't last, or they're trying to do it the cheap way, or, they can redo one road every year, and you shouldn't have to do that. To me, I mean, I don't know anything about that, but it seems like you don't have to redo something if you do it right the first time. That
So-
but some period. I mean, I'm sorry, just kind of thought about that.
And typically we would have one of our city engineers, the engineer who will be working with us and be present at like our infrastructure meeting, wasn't able to make this meeting tonight. I don't know that she could necessarily also talk citywide about that, but as far as material, she would be better
Orange,
equipped to answer that.
just fine. Wonder why.
Pam?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I am right here by this orange. I am that orange, the only orange there. And I call my potholes in all the time on my 24th through the 25th. And that's right by my house, right there. I'm the only orange. So why am I the very poor?
So I just want to be transparent on this. This is the only thing that I have not evaluated myself. This is something where the city has had someone come in and evaluate roads. We use their scores. And again, this is, like I said, something may be fair and it's not in good condition. It may be overall pavement and that the replacement of potholes in that area has contributed to that score. I don't know. I will go out and double check just to see and, see how that feels compared to everything else. We do not have to use this map as a tool to say this is what needs to be repaired necessarily. If you are comfortable with the road, that tells me that.
No.
Okay, well, that's good to know too, but we can, so if you're having to call in potholes on a regular basis, then that indicates that is a stretch of roadway that we could consider for,
See on that map right there, it was orange and green and yellow all together in one intersection right there.
Mhm.
Okay, that is my intersection. I can tell you, no, you're down, go down.
Right here?
Like that, right there. Yep, right there. There is a bad, I don't even know what to call it. It is angled. It's angled very, very bad right there. And the asphalt is sticking up. And then like when it rains, it gets water everywhere right there. And the, thing on the street, the gutterings and all that needs to be replaced right there. But yeah, that is a bad intersection right there.
I believe so driving this area, I believe I know what you're talking about, where the road is actually, it goes above the gutter. And so, you're saying it doesn't allow it to get
like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So to reiterate, the importance of forming the SORT planning committee is that when we go to discuss how that 1.7 million will be spent and we look at road projects and curb and gutter projects, having this information and having individuals in the neighborhood who can speak to how the conditions are on a regular basis, that is what is important to this. So I appreciate that input.
I need one
Go
more.
ahead.
We have a neighbor here that just came, and I need to add her to your roster. Her name is Belinda Wasson, Wasson.
Okay.
I'm done. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Susan, I do not know when exactly the pavement conditions were determined for Valley Park. I will get an answer for you on that.
Thank you. I think that makes a difference when we're talking about snapshots in time.
Absolutely. Okay. So next slide. So again, I said we were not going to, I don't want to spend as much time here. Like I said, we have something to talk about. I did feel it was important not to absolutely neglect the discussion of floodplain impact on Valley Park. So I made sure to keep this included. This is something that still, you all know, you all experience this. I've heard the stories now of how you feel whenever it rains. So I included this to let you know that this is not something that I'm neglecting or trying to look over or gloss over. We'll talk about it. So if you need a second to look at this, this is pulled from, I believe FEMA provides us with these maps, but this is the conditions of, this is the floodplain impact on Valley Park. And I will give us like 15, 20, 30 seconds, and then I'll double check. And if there's anything else, again, I know we've had a good discussion already. Unless there's something jarring, we can move on and begin the exercise.
What does regulatory floodway mean and special floodway? What does that mean?
I do not know the actual definitions. Across the board, I don't know the difference between those two. That would be something that Braxton probably would be more suited to answer, and I don't want to misspeak about what that might be. I know that, typically the regulatory floodway is a higher likelihood to flood as opposed to the 100 or 500 year. That's something I can confirm, but I don't necessarily know the difference between the regulatory and special.
Do you see from here how much of Valley Park was affected when it flooded? See that map?
Yes, I can see from this that there's a large impact when it rains. And then Robert, did you just put your hand up?
Yeah, I did. Something I think I understand, but to clarify and to help others that maybe haven't been a part of the sort process as much, maybe, is it that the HUD dollars cannot be spent in the floodplain? And if so, is that all of this coloring here, or is that just the regulatory floodway? Do you know the answer to that, etc.?
So the HUD dollars cannot be spent in the 100-year floodplain or the regulatory floodway, which is generally what you see here. If it is the 500-year, my understanding is that HUD dollars could go there. So when we go to start distinguishing what our target areas are, which are those 3 to 5 block groups that we want to target our investment in, that is where we will need to kind of take a look at how some of this is. But that is correct. And just for full transparency, 100-year typically means that on any given year, there's a 1% chance that floods. It's not that every 100 years this will flood. It just is a 1% chance of any given year that it would flood.
Thanks.
Yep. Thank you. That was a great question too. Wade, I'm reading your comment real quick so I can make sure I'm not missing anything. Wade, that's something that Susan and I talked about earlier this week, I guess. So we did have a discussion about maybe holding an additional meeting where if there's someone else who can come in and have a larger discussion, or if we need to make that a separate meeting and not maybe discuss the rest of the infrastructure stuff, because that would be a really jam-packed and long meeting, we can definitely do that. And I'll make sure you're included when we get those timelines outlined. Okay. And Greg, I see your comment. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to lead into what we'll be doing and get the first question up, and then I will go in and read what you put there. So that way, and everybody else, you have access to this chat as well. So if you see something in there, feel free to read it as well. So this is that SWOT type exercise, the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities of the neighborhood. There's 3 different ones. We'll cover a topic. I want to hear what you have to say. We will fill out this table together. And again, either call it out, raise your hand, and I will get us to that question. Okay, let me figure out how to do this so you guys can see it as I edit. All right, so what is one thing you want to preserve about Valley Park? So this is where we're thinking, what are the strengths of the neighborhood? And this is, you can be as aspirational or however you feel here.
One of the things we've talked about that I've heard us talk about in the past, I'll put it that way, is a lot of people like the park-like feeling that it has. So it's the atmosphere, if you will, peacefulness. Large tree, the trees and stuff like that are important.
Thank you, Susan. Anybody else?
If we put it in the survey, you want us to talk about it again here then?
Rosemary, if you want to throw it out there, I think that would be great. Sometimes hearing what other people have to say really can help, get their creative juices going. And
I did on the survey too. I
Yeah,
say
well,
the
I
neighborhood
kind of
school.
agree. I'm sorry.
I just said the neighborhood school. We need a neighborhood public school.
neighborhood public pool,
No, school.
school.
No pool.
Oh, no.
I apologize. I am hard of hearing.
That's okay.
Public,
Stout school,
School.
Elementary school.
yeah. There you go.
thank you.
Yep.
Doug, and then Rosemary, I remember you had your hand up too.
Well, one of the things I hear about the neighborhood, one of the things I've always liked about it is the architecture. It's a classic mid-century modern with the flatter roofs and everything, which don't help you much in the wintertime, holding heat in, but a lot of people really like that style. And we could maybe try to keep it and any improvements that are made, try to save as many of the houses as we can and restore them. What we did with the house that we have on 23rd Street.
Excellent, thank you. Rosemary?
I agree. I think that's a wonderful idea because I understand they're called the California style home. And mine is has a rubber roof on it, which has been really good. It doesn't, the hail can't damage it or I've had it there for several years and has had very, very little damage. But I love that home. It's very open. I like the size of it. I like the roof, the ceiling, and the interior, the way the have that what do you call that wood? Redwood type wood on the inside. And each home is a little bit differently designed. Their colors are different, and I like that about that. And they have that what do you call the wood? The wood cedar wood as siding. And I don't know, it's just it's a beautiful home, when you take care of it right. It's a very beautiful home, and the windows, a lot of windows, and but I agree with what Mr. May said about keeping, when they have to remodel or a home, that they keep that aspect of it.
And I just want to let you know I'm filling in some of the things that Wade provided. So I want to say thank you, Wade, for providing all those. I'm going to go ahead and again, this survey is also available online. If you've had any issues, let me know. I'll email you a link directly so you can fill that out there as well. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next question then. So what is one thing you would fix or change about Valley Park? So we're thinking of the weaknesses of the neighborhood.
I would think one of the major weaknesses of our neighborhood would be the inability of our police department to curb the drug houses and the very large amount of public nuisances that are non-code compliant, particularly on the rental properties.
Trying to think of, so public nuisances within existing housing. And I apologize, you all get to see how not great of a typer I am. So code compliance issues.
For example, on Boswell Court between 22nd and 24th, I don't think there's maybe 2 houses on that whole block that doesn't have a yard full of old cars that are backed in, so you can't see that they don't have license plates on them in the yard. And every time they do move one of those old junkers, they drag all the mud and debris out in the street. When the limbs fall out of their trees, they throw them into the street. They just don't take care of their properties in those particular group of rental houses.
I'm pretty sure we do not have a very high number of code compliance findings and haven't had for months. And that's, I mean, it was because I kind of keep track of that pretty well to see what the breakdown is between homeowners and rentals as well. So, but we really don't have that many. I think the last time I looked, there was like, less than 20, less than 15 properties with code issues. So I really think overall that's pretty low.
So you think greater presence of code compliance officers or whatever their official title is needed?
I'm
Yeah.
not saying that, but that's what he's saying, I think.
Okay,
Yeah,
I just wanted to clarify.
Absolutely. I can sit right here in my chair and tell you 20 houses within 2 blocks of me that have no window screens, that have trash and debris in the yard, that have multiple junk vehicles parked on the yard, that have portions of the house falling off, porches, screens, windows, doors. The list goes on and on and on and on, and nothing ever seems to get done. Code compliance doesn't seem to want to enforce any of the rules on those. And in every case, every single case, it is a rental property.
Okay, thank you. I know we're talking a lot about code compliance here, so I don't want to beat a dead horse by adding all the different variations. I think we can kind of paint that with a broad brush here. Robert, I see you, or Doug, I believe you had your hand up first. Robert, and then Wade. Try and get everyone here.
A couple of things. First of all, you've got the streets of 22nd Park and 23rd Street, which run west for about 2 blocks over to Stout School. And there is the biggest ditch that I think exists in Topeka, right between those 2 streets. And the city, I don't know, I think it was done for drainage, but the city has allowed it to fill up with junk. The mosquito problem is terrible. And the trees are incredible through there. Then on the 23rd Street side, as you get towards where it widens out, where you're at right there, no one mows that. And I don't know who it belongs to, but I would think it would be municipal property, and that either the park department or someone would mow it. On the other side, on 22nd Park, I think some of the neighbors take care of that because it looks pretty good, but it's also a much narrower strip. So, that's something, we spent a lot of money just keeping the trees that have overgrown over the house that we own there, it was all gonna come down. And all the rest of the trees are overgrown. We had the city out. They actually had the gall to tell us that area there didn't belong to the city, that it belonged to us. And I haven't had the time yet, or to go down to City Hall and talk to someone about that, because I think they lied to us. They don't want to do anything for the neighborhood, certain departments. The other thing is, we've got this thing, I think it's still in Topeka, called the Neighborhood Revitalization Act. Is that still in place?
Yes, it is.
On neighborhoods, and the city has to, the areas where that would apply, the city has to designate those as blighted. I think what they've done is they've taken great swaths in the city and whole neighborhoods and called them blighted. And if you look at the map that you had up earlier and said there were some streets, I would say that those streets are blighted. And if they could find a way to narrow that down and pick out the areas, the Neighborhood Revitalization Act is a great thing, because then any money that you spend on the improvement of the property, anything that you can then take a tax credit. I think it's still that way. It's been a long time since I really dealt with it personally. But that would go against your property taxes, and it's a great encouragement for people, whether they live there or whether they own the property for rentals, to improve them. So I would love to look into that.
So Doug, I realize it's 7:30 here, so I want to, first off, if anybody had anything that they need to take off for, at least thank you for your time. We're getting pretty close to the end here, so if you can bear with me, I will try and take these comments as well. So again, I know Robert, Brian, I believe you have your hand up as well.
Yeah, I'll be quick. There's a couple of intersections that I at least view kind of problematic, that could maybe be one at the very south end of Plas and Shunga, is just a really weird and unclear, awkward intersection.
Right in here.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I guess some of the other stuff is more about signage, but up at like 22nd-ish and Wayne and High Converge up there is just a real blind spot and kind of unsafe, and no intersection control either. And yeah, I don't know the solution, but anywho, I don't know if this is within the purview of the project, but there's some potential trail access points. And then lastly, and I think within the scope of the project and on everybody's mind, but just to mention it, plenty of curb, gutter, drainage improvement opportunities. And that's all.
I appreciate that. Brian, I see your comment, and I didn't know if you had your hand up. Wade? Oh.
And I'm a landlord in the neighborhood. I'm a landlord in other neighborhoods. I want to make sure, be careful what you ask for. I'm fighting code compliance issues. The city put together a team where they had several people from several different departments. They got their clipboards out. They walked down the middle of the street. I think in one day, they wrote like 350 citations in one particular neighborhood. And the house that I own had some peeling paint around the windows. And so I got a ticket for that. And I've been going to court talking to a judge about trying to get that remediated. Problem is, it's a 3-story house. It's lead-based paint. You know, you get the state involved with something like that. I mean, there's no, the quotes were coming back like $10,000.
Wade, I feel like you cut out there.
Prosper. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay. I'm not sure where I cut out. I just want to make sure that we're careful about asking for more oversight with code compliance. I have a house that got caught up in a city sweep, and I got violation for peeling paint. It seems like a really easy request, right? Well, the house is 3 stories tall, and it's lead-based paint. The quotes were coming back at $10,000 to scrape and paint the house. And I don't know how many residents are going to have money to make those upgrades, you know, or if they get a ticket, you know. I go to court every 45 days and talk to the city judge now about it until I can get this fixed. I I don't know what we can do about it to meet in the middle somewhere. It stinks. I'm a landlord. I want to get rid of the slumlords in Topeka. There's no place for that. You should hear the stories that I hear from my tenants when they apply to live in one of my houses, and they tell me the conditions that they're putting up with some other landlords that don't really care about them. It's really sad. I want those people to go away that own those properties. I hope we can find a way to all work together. And as somebody with a vested interest in the neighborhood, I would love to see us get some groups together and maybe get some city funding, and let's go paint people's houses for them. Let's all work together, and maybe we can rely on city oversight less and be more proactive instead of trying to catch things when they're already out of hand. But I'll wrap up. That's all I really wanted to have input.
Well, I know the neighborhood association would love to work with you in those goals in different ways. So we'll be in touch on our end too.
Doug, if you can be real quick, it sounds like
That was my question. Do we have an NIA? How do we get in touch with them? Because I think we should be working with them, or they should be working with us. I assume a lot of the people that are on here today have had some experience with the NIA.
Well, Doug, Robert Riley's the president.
Yes, we do.
Susan McClary's the vice president. Pam Garrison's the treasurer. And we have a website. We send out mailers periodically about our meetings.
Yeah, Doug, let's chat further. We'll exchange contact information in the chat.
So it sounds like we've transitioned naturally to where do we see as opportunities? So we're hearing things like get groups together to help lift up the neighborhood through it, whether it's painting. Sounds like maybe, not saying the NIA does not have capacity, but some greater capacity to help facilitate these organizations. And I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth here. Is there anything else everybody sees as kind of an opportunity for the neighborhood?
Well, we're also working in the Citizens Advisory Council. I'm just going to put a plug in real quick, because we're also trying to work on getting an event where we are we have a project to try to get some cleanup done in all NIA neighborhoods. And so we're trying to work on that. It hasn't even been out. I mean, the general public doesn't even know anything about it right at this point. But since I'm heading it up, I can talk about it. But I just want you guys to know that, when we have these cleanup days, there's nothing stopping anybody from helping a neighbor clean up their stuff other than, going over there and asking if you can help them. So I just want to keep that in mind as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Anybody else have what they think are opportunities? Again, we don't have to just talk organizational. It can be something as simple as safer routes to schools for kids, things like that. So I don't want to limit it. If there's anything else, feel free to throw it out there.
This is Kim Thompson with the vice chair for the CAC. We also have a housing committee. We'd like to have some additional representation. We've talked about these issues and I'm working on them. And I'm also the CAC rep for the AHRC, for the Affordable Housing Resource for the city. So if you attend a CAC meeting, which is coming up, I'd be more than interested in having your inputs at that level. I'm out.
Thank you, Kim.
I do.
Yes. All right, let's go. Rosemary, Doug, and then Pam.
Okay.
Rosemary?
Okay. Did you want me to add, what was are you wanting me to speak about the opportunities?
Yeah, if you had any additional opportunities for the neighborhood.
Okay. I would like to see the Shunga Drive become more safer. That's been an issue for many years. Even though the signs say the speed is, I think it's 15, but they're going, many cars go through there 40 miles an hour faster. And some have ended up in the neighbor's yard and knocked over trees and hit cars. And I had suggested, maybe 2 or 3 years back, I had seen an article about these 3-dimensional speed bumps. They look like they're if you look at them, the way they're painted, they look like there is a speed bump there, but it really isn't. It's flat. And so I had asked if we could put some of those throughout Chunga Drive, and said that we couldn't do that in Topeka, but I don't understand. I mean, I really don't see why not.
We can definitely include some language with that, and I appreciate that. Driving on Chunga, I can tell you that yes, trying to evaluate homes while having cars fly by you does not feel great. Doug and then Pam, and then I think after that, if we can wrap it up, I think it'd be probably good for everybody.
Quick question, what's a CAC?
Citizens Advisory Committee? Did I
Oh.
say that right? Making sure.
Yeah.
It says an advisory council.
Council, I
And they're-
apologize.
That's fine. And there's typically each NIA elects or somebody volunteers from the NIA to represent that NIA in the collaborative effort called the Citizens Advisory Council. You
Got
can
it.
find more information about that on the Topeka website, topeka.org website under community engagement.
Okay, Pam, sorry.
Get groups together mine would be up on the very first one, painting homes. I would like houses to have their numbers of their address on their homes. So I would like part of the money to be spent just to go to the hardware store and buy them, and then knock on the doors and just say, hey, we are here to help the emergency department have your house numbers on your house, so it would be more feasible for the emergency numbers to see your house. We have a neighbor that Meals on Wheels deliver every day, but there's no numbers at 2301, so they're driving past it every day for different cars or Meals on Wheels. And I would like, and even if we had take a screwdriver or what's those things? They're where you peel off the back and stick them on there. Yeah,
Mhm.
just numbers, house numbers for emergency wise. Thank you.
Pam, not
Yeah.
having your number on both sides of your house is a code compliance issue that virtually every house in this neighborhood is not in compliance with. House numbers must be posted in a particular size, in a particular font, in a particular place on both sides of the property.
Oh,
To be in
Brian, it's
compliance with
2301. Wow. Okay. Thanks, Greg.
And I would so I will make sure, again, this is recorded, so I just want to make sure you remember that if you're putting information out there. No, and you're fine. I can try and help facilitate a conversation there.
25 Drive.
All right. That is all I have. The only thing I have remaining is if you want to continue to be involved, you all have contacted me. That's how you're here. If you would do that again, let me know and I will make sure you're invited to the next planning committee meeting. We'll probably talk about housing initially. So what's going to go into the plan itself. But again, I appreciate everybody's time and willingness to contribute to this conversation. And I don't have anything else. So I guess I would say if there's any final comments, but other than that, I'm prepared to end the meeting.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Bryson.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Bryson.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
Dan.
you for hosting the meeting.
Thanks, city people and all the participants.
Amen.
Have a great evening, everyone.